Hi friends, this is Amy from A-Star Reads, and I'm really excited because I just finished my first quiz of the quarter, and so I figured what better way to celebrate that accomplishment than to do a tag, because tags are fun. And there's actually this really cool tag that I was tagged in by Antonisha from Mrs. Moody Reader called the A to Z tag. And this was originally created by Perpetual Page Turner, and I will put the information for that blog down below, as well as Antonisha's channel. She is a fantastic booktuber. She has great opinions on books. She's someone who I really enjoy watching, and I think you should check her out. I'm gonna go through these answers pretty quickly because there are 27 questions. It's the A to Z tag, so there's a different letter for each question, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I don't want this to be an hour-long video. It's just a tag, so I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, giving a brief explanation as to my answer, and then I will move forward. So for A, author you've read the most books from, and I was kind of going through my Goodreads, thinking about it, and it has to be Laurel K. Hamilton, who is the author of the Anita Blake series. This is a paranormal urban fantasy series about vampire hunter and vampires and all kinds of were animals in general. My friends and family and I were really into this series when it was like late high school through early 20s. I think there's like 28 or so books in the series. I don't remember exactly how many I've read in that series, but definitely read a lot. B, best sequel ever. Well, at this point I probably have to give Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb the best sequel ranking because I gave it 5 stars. I was trying to look back at other sequels I've read in stories, and I don't think I gave any as high of a rating. So Royal Assassin, you're the winner. C, currently reading. I'm currently reading Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb, which I own, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which is an audiobook, Reaching for the Moon by Katherine Johnson, which is a library book, and I got an e-arc of Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid from NetGalley, so have started that book as well. D, drink of choice while reading. I would say coffee or tea. I tend to enjoy something cozy when I'm reading, and if it's the beginning of the day, it'll be coffee. If it's middle towards the end of the day, it'll probably be tea. I'm not too picky about teas. I don't like to drink anything with too much caffeine after a certain time, just because, you know, I'd like to sleep well. But if I drink something like chamomile, which I love, it'll probably put me in too much of a relaxed state and I won't be able to read anymore. E, e-reader or physical book. I am absolutely a physical book reader. I will read ebooks, but I prefer physical books by far. Just, that's my favorite way of reading books in general. F, fictional character you probably would have dated in high school. Okay, well, I wasn't awkward. I mean, I wasn't awkward when it came to friends and things like that, but I was very awkward when it came to boys. In fact, I still am. So awkward. So I probably wouldn't have dated these guys in high school, but I would have crushed on these guys in high school and agonized over them for days and days and months. But I'm gonna go with Jonah from the book I just recently read, A Semi-Definitive List of Worst Nightmares by Crystal Sutherland, because I really liked his personality and he absolutely would have been a dude I would have had a crush on in high school. And then the other one is from Harry Potter. I would have loved Ron Weasley. Yeah, that has always been a favorite of mine. G, glad you gave this book a chance. And so I'm actually gonna go with Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, because I read this book in high school and I just could not understand it at all. The stream of consciousness perspective was something that I just really struggled with, and I tried and I just couldn't get into it. But then when I read it as an adult, I really enjoyed this book a lot, and I thought the writing was so beautiful, and I comprehended the concept so much more, which shows you how much brain development makes a difference. I'm learning about brain development right now, so sorry. It's a big thing right now. With Piaget and Vygotsky, we're learning about how the brain works. So yeah, I guess my brain is stuck on that. So anyways, that's my answer. H, hidden gem book. And for this one, I'm gonna go with Sadie by Courtney Summers. This is a book that I heard about as being a very great audiobook, but I knew nothing about it. I really didn't have experience reading YA books of this type, and listening to it was such an experience, and I did absolutely love it. In fact, that's another one I would like to re-listen to at some point soon. It was such an impactful book and kind of opened my eyes to some of the YA contemporary books that I am currently enjoying. And so I really thought Sadie was a great book, and it was a hidden gem for me. I, important moment in your reading life. This was like in my early 20s when I found this book club through Meetup. This Meetup is this platform that allows people to get together into clubs. And it was this book club where they read nonfiction books one month and fiction books the next. So like every other month it would rotate between nonfiction and fiction. And this was really my first foray into nonfiction writing because I had never really picked up nonfiction books before. And although I loved the months where we talked about fiction books, I really, really loved the books where we talked about nonfiction books because I think they make for fantastic book club reads. And so this was really important for me because it started my love of nonfiction, but it also started my love of book clubs. Sorry, had to readjust. The sun was moving on me. I feel like that book club kind of paved the way for understanding what I love when it comes to book discussions and that thought-driven process when you're analyzing books. I love it so much, and I love collaborating with other people because I feel like I understand a lot more about books when I'm discussing books with other people, and I can understand their perspective, and then I can also even better understand my own perspective or my own understanding of a book. It's something that I like after a good book club meeting. I feel like actual adrenaline surges after really good book club meetings, which sounds really strange, but it's true for me. And I feel like the book clubs actually paved my way for going back to school and wanting to learn more and realizing how much I love learning because I wasn't a good student when I was younger at all. I didn't see the value in education. That was a very long answer, but I guess it was a very pivotal moment for me in my reading life and how much it influenced my actual development as a person. So, yeah. Deep. Okay, Jay, just finished. I just finished The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. Finally, after 6 months or something like that, listening to this 50-hour audiobook, I finished it. I can't believe it. It was almost anticlimactic. I was like, oh, well, there's the end. This long buildup of reading and reading and reading, or listening and listening and listening, and it's over. And what do I do with myself now? I feel so lost. Okay. Kinds of books you won't read. I think it just depends on the book and whether or not I'm interested in the story that's being told, although there are trigger warnings that I will avoid. If I start reading a book and there's too much of that trigger in the book, I will put it down. And there's not very many examples of that because I usually can put up with a little bit of it, but I have DNF'd one book recently that it was just too much for me. And that trigger warning is anything having to do with child abuse or child molestation. Anything that's in excess that makes me uncomfortable or makes me feel like it's going to wreck me emotionally. I don't force myself to read books that are detailed on those subjects. Longest book you ever read would have to be The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. I thought maybe it was The Stand by Stephen King, but I was looking at the page numbers and it was absolutely The Witching Hour. So I finished it. I finished the longest book I've ever read. Major hangover because of. I don't think I've ever read any specific book that gave me a huge hangover. More so I've had reading experiences that have given me hangovers. Like November of 2020 last year was really difficult for me. It was a great month. I did Indigathon and I did Believe-a-thon, and I read 22 or 23 books. It was a fantastic month, but I was burnt out not only on reading, but I was more so burnt out on those types of books, the genre. I had to do something different. I had to read something different. And look, the sun is starting to move again. It's just, I'm gonna be off the bench here in a minute. Okay, I changed the angle completely. I'm facing a whole different direction. You have another different background. N, number of bookcases you own. I own one bookcase that's my books that I haven't read bookcase. And then I have a TBR cart, which I use to kind of organize my current reads that I've currently finished, and then reads I've brought in but haven't really put into my system to put them on my shelf. And then I have boxes and boxes full of books that I've already read that I would like to keep, but don't really have a place for them. So don't really have too many bookshelves. I have book boxes. Oh, one book you've read multiple times. And this was kind of difficult because I feel like there's a few books that I've read multiple times that I could have used for this example, but the one I'm going to go with is The Witch of Blackbird Pond by Elizabeth George Spear, which was one that I read like in middle school for school, and I just loved it. And I loved it so much then that I probably read it a few times then I bought it recently and reread it, and I can understand why young Amy loved it so much. It's absolutely a book that I will continue to read and probably keep on my shelf for nostalgic rereads here and there. P, preferred place to read. So typically I read in my chair, my little reclining chair in the house. or I read in my bed. But if I have a preferred place to read, when the weather is nice, I like to take my outdoor lounge chair into the woods and read in the woods because it's very peaceful as long as the neighbors aren't doing anything crazy. It's just pleasant and it's relaxing. Also, I love the idea and sometimes the experience of reading at a coffee shop because I love sitting there and having a coffee and just reading. But most time I get distracted by the people around me. I tend to be one of those readers who gets distracted by noises or people, and so it's not necessarily a bad thing because you get the experience of experiencing other people, but it's also, if I'm trying to get through something, it can be difficult because I'll keep looking up and I have a hard time focusing for very long on the book that I'm reading. Q, quote that inspires you, gives you all the feels from a book. I'm not the kind of person who's good at this sort of thing, like thinking of quotes, remembering quotes. I'm not someone who can watch movies and remember all the quotes of a movie. I can remember song lyrics and I can sing the song lyrics, but if you're asking me to think of something where I read that one passage and it made me like. And so trying to think of a specific quote was hard. And so what I did was I went online and I looked up all the best quotes from books and looked to see which books I had actually read. And I picked one that I felt spoke to me the most. And that was from Beloved by Toni Morrison. And it was the quote, "You are your best thing," which I felt was such a compelling point of that book anyways, but also a very important message about self-care and self-worth and understanding your purpose in life and understanding why you are valuable as a person and not trying to depend on other people or other lives, in this case, to bring purpose to your own life. So I really love that quote. You are your best thing. R, reading regret. So I actually do have a reading regret. I read The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides while I was in Fiji on a vacation. A wonderful vacation. It was beautiful and romantic. It wasn't romantic for me, I was single at the time, but it was like a romantic location and such a pleasant, happy time. And The Marriage Plot is not a pleasant, happy book. The experience of reading it there was difficult. And so I wouldn't recommend when you go on vacation, especially to places that are more relaxing, and you should be reading things that are fun and lighthearted. Don't read books like The Marriage Plot when you're on a tropical vacation. S, series you started and need to finish. And all the books are out in the series. So I've just recently started the Realm of the Elderling series, which is the larger series. I'm reading the Farseer trilogy at the moment, but it's all part of the Realm of the Elderling series. And it'll take me a while to get through it, but it's a series that I have started and need to continue. T, 3 of your all-time favorite books. So this is really hard for me because I'm not really a favorites kind of person. At least my favorites change because I change and things I enjoy change and life changes and different moods dictate different enjoyments of different books. And so it's really hard to kind of give you a clear idea of what my favorite all-time books are. So I went kind of like with 3 different types of books. My favorite nonfiction science book was The Beak of the Finch by Jonathan Weiner. And this book spoke to my love of the theory of evolution and learning more about that, especially since I got my degree in evolutionary biology. And so it was a book that I just loved so much, and I loved the way it was presented. I loved the research. It was fascinating to me, and I enjoyed my whole experience of reading that book. So absolutely, The Beak of the Finch was one of my favorites. And if you're interested in learning more about evolutionary biology, I highly recommend that book. I think it was a fantastic one. The next one I'm going to go with is a recent read that I just really enjoyed because it's one of those books that I feel will always bring joy to my life and happiness every time I read it. And it spoke to a part of me that I'm really focusing on right now in trying to become an educator. And that was The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Absolutely loved that book. Loved all the emotions that it played inside of me. And I liked the story, I liked the characters, everything about it was very cozy and feel good for me, which I needed recently. So it was wonderful. And then finally, Dracula by Bram Stoker. And the reason I'm saying this book is because I feel like this is a book that I will continue to read in different periods of my life because I enjoyed it so much. And it's such a seasonal read, so during a certain time of the year, I can reread it and not feel like, oh, I've read it before, I'm bored. I have done a lot of thinking about this book because we discussed it a lot in one of my courses, in my literature courses. I really enjoyed diving into this book even deeper and even looking at some of the flaws that the book had. I enjoyed the whole process. Although I will say that these aren't my 3 all-time favorite books ever because I don't really have any all-time favorite books ever. You, unapologetic fangirl of? Well, I am a Disney girl, and you have probably seen this through my videos where I'm talking about my Disney pins and different things having to do with my love of Disney. I do watch Disney YouTubers, not as much now that I've gotten into BookTube more, but I'm a big fan. I love to go to Disneyland. It's like a happy place for me. I grew up going to Disneyland because I lived in California. One of my first relationships, Disneyland was a place we went. I lived down in Los Angeles for a while, so we went there like a couple times a month, and so it has played a big part in my life. It's a comfort for me. I absolutely love Disney, and I'm unapologetic about it. I am. V, very excited for this release more than all others. The release that I'm most excited about at the moment is called The Sea in Winter by Christine Day. And Christine Day is the author of I Can Make This Promise, which I read back in November, and I loved so much. 5-star book, and promised myself that I would read everything else by Christine Day. This is her next book. It's at the library. I'm like 4th in line for it. Hopefully it'll come soon. Once it does, I will be reading that book right away. Plus it's middle grade, so it shouldn't be too hard of a read. W, worst bookish habit. Well, I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the whole cafe thing. When I like to read in cafes, I get distracted easily, especially if I'm listening to an audiobook. That's the worst. Like, there are certain situations when I listen to an audiobook, I can focus really well on the book, but other situations I will get distracted and I will start thinking about other things. And that can be true about reading as well. I oftentimes will sit with a book and I start reading it, and then partway through I think, oh, I gotta go do this, or oh, I gotta go do that. And then I make myself a note or something, but then I'll go back to reading because I know I have to read, but then all of a sudden I will think of something else I need to do, or something else my focus, especially these last couple of years, has been really difficult about maintaining that focus in that moment for a certain length of time, which is something I'm trying to work on because it's very frustrating to me. Mom and Shell can sit and read, and noise and all kinds of stuff can be going on around them, and they don't hear a word. They just focus on what they're reading and they don't get distracted at all. I'm not like that, and it really bothers me. X marks the spot. Start at the top left of your shelf and pick the 27th book on your shelf. Saturday Night by Susan Orlean is this book that's basically exactly what it says it is, a book about Saturday nights. She went around the country, the US, and interviewed people to find out what they like to do on Saturday nights, and kind of got this idea of what people tend to do, what kind of trends there are, people who had to work on Saturday nights. Sometimes I like those more fun sociological type nonfiction books where they're looking at like sections of society and seeing what kind of things they do. You can tell from this picture that it's going to be pretty outdated because I think this was written in 1990. So people probably do much different things now in 2021 than they did back in the 90s, or in the 80s actually would be. So interesting book. It'll probably be a fun read at some point. And it didn't get very good reviews though. It got 3.57. So I don't know. Maybe I'll try it at some point and see if it's any good, and then if it's not, then it was probably a quarter, so it won't be that painful to put it like in a small library or something like that. Why? Your latest book purchase. And for this one, I recently purchased 2 books. One was All Systems Red by Martha Wells, and this is, I think, like a novella in the Murderbot series. I found out about this series through Katja Weinert, and I was really excited to hear about it. It just sounded fascinating, and then I went to the store and I was like, oh, look, there it is. So I picked it up. I've been craving sci-fi lately, and my TBR game doesn't allow me to read a lot of sci-fi because I just never seem to land on that. So it's nice that it's a novella. I'll probably end up having to pick it up soon. And sorry, there's people doing work on their house, it sounds like, in the other neighborhood. So if you hear that sound, that's what that's from. And then the other one I picked up was this beautiful copy of The Story of King Arthur and His Knights by Howard Pyle. And I was really excited about this one because, look, it's beautiful for one. I loved the cover of this, and I was really excited about reading it because I seem to have some sort of attraction to the whole Knights of the Round Table story, which is why I would like to read Legendborn at some point, because I know it's kind of based off that. And so because of my fascination with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, I figured how appropriate to read the first book, or at least I think one of the first books that has to do with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. I'm saying that and I haven't done any research on it, but I picked it up because it's so pretty. Z, which is the Sleep Snatcher book, and this is Last Book That Kept You Up Way Too Late. It'll probably have to be Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb, especially with some of the exciting scenes. I absolutely stayed up too late reading that book. I would be doing the same with Assassin's Quest at the moment, except that I do have to get up early enough to study and get to class oftentimes, so it's a little harder to stay up too late these days and enjoy books. Although I find that that's the time that I get most of my reading done. Like 2 nights ago, I finished The Witching Hour right before bed. So lately, that's kind of the best time for me to read is late at night before I fall asleep. So that's it. That's A through Z, and I'm really excited about this tag. I'd like to see other people do it. I think it's kind of an older tag, so I don't think the people that I'm going to be tagging have actually done it yet. So I'm going to tag Jeremy Fee because he does a lot of tags, and I think he would have a lot of fun with this one. I'm going to tag John from Hey Y'all Listen Up because he also enjoys doing tags, or at least I see him doing a lot of tags, so I think that he'll have fun with this one as well. And finally, I'm going to tag Beth Ann from the channel, Beth Ann Berninka Sogalar, and I think that she also does a lot of tags. I'm tagging people who enjoy doing tags and tend to do a lot of tags, so I can't wait to see what your guys' answers are. And if you are interested in doing the A to Z tag, do it, and put a link for your video in the comment section down below so I can see what your answers are, because I just think this one was a lot of fun. So if you like this video, click the like button and subscribe now so you can see more tags. I have been tagged in quite a few, and hopefully one day I will catch up with them. So if I haven't done your tag yet and you tagged me, bear with me. It'll happen, I promise. Thank you so much for watching.